And I like doing presentations. I like being able to share and have some back and forth. And so having the opportunity to come to Lakewood Library and present 4 pieces of the book, 4 very important pieces of the book, was very appealing to me. And so that's why I've been doing these for the last 4 weeks. The first week was on assertiveness, which we nicknamed Power Getting. Second week was on, second week on love? Yeah, second week was on love, Power Loving. Third week was on Power Joy, finding methods of getting happiness. This week, I've combined 2 important sections of the book. In the book, there's the healing a single heart, and then there's healing the heart of our community. And so I've combined those 2 for this week, which will make it kind of crowded, but we I'm sure we'll get through it. So as we think about healing, I think a first step is to recognize that it's something that all of us need, that nobody grows up in a wounded society without being wounded. And so we all are carrying seeds of hurt and pain inside of us and things that keep us from fulfilling the lives we want to fulfill. And so I want to walk through this stuff with you with that in mind, that for some of us the healing takes lots and lots and lots of work. And for some of us it's just some tuning up and some ways of dealing with small pieces that have made life more complicated for us than it has to be. So to start, I have these 3 quotes up here, which some of you won't be able to see because of the podium. The first one says, "We cannot heal what we cannot feel." John Bradshaw, who has written many, many books on healing, said that a number of years ago. The second quote says, "You cannot fix what you will not face." And that's James Baldwin, great writer and activist. And the third quote is by Alice Miller. I don't know how many people are familiar with Alice Miller. Do you know who she is? She's written a number of books on sexual abuse healing. So her quote is, "There is no healing alternative to recognizing and facing the truth." This is a really key point to healing. And of course, the other 2 statements fit right with it. If we can't face what the problems are, then we're not going to have a very easy time fixing the problems. We have to pay attention to what's going on inside of us. We have to pay attention to what causes what's going on inside of us. And so as we look at healing, we have to start with that notion. As I mentioned to begin, as we pass on the pain, we live in a wounded culture. Each family usually passes on the wounds from generation to generation. Now, they may look different from generation to generation. In the book, I talk about a person that I worked with who he felt pretty good about himself, but he just knew something was missing and had a hard time in his relationships. And when he started describing his mother, he described how she was really devoted to him and she still cared about him and wanted to help him and all of these things, except that she never touched him. She, for whatever, I don't know what went on in her past, but she was unable to use physical touch to nurture her children. And so whatever happened to her, and that wouldn't have been the likely thing that happened, that somebody was unable to touch her. That's possible, but there could be lots of other things that would have caused her not to feel comfortable touching. But then, of course, it got passed on to her son, and he found ways that he was inhibited in relationships. And so it's not necessarily the same thing, but the pain gets passed on. It just manifests itself differently with each generation. Now, denial enables us all to live with the wounds and dysfunction without addressing them. There's a movie from 1984. It was a big hit at the time. Oh no, I can't remember the name of it. A bunch of people got back to, Big Chill, The Big Chill. And there's a scene in that movie where one of these are a bunch of people who were close friends in college in the 60s, and they were all part of this anti-war movement and all this. And they're not close friends anymore, but they all come back together because one of their friends has committed suicide. And they're spending a weekend at a house and really dealing with all of this confusion about, they were supposed to be such close friends and all this stuff. And anyway, one of them was a radio psychologist for a little while, and he's talking to the other one something about, they were talking about masturbation, and he says, people have to masturbate, and the other one says, Jeff Goldblum played the character, he said, there's nothing like a juicy rationalization. He says, you can go without masturbating, but who can go without rationalizing? And that we rationalize things away, and rationalization is a form of denial, where you rationalize it away so that it doesn't really mean much. My dad used to beat me with a pipe. But he was, he's just trying to teach me how to live in the real world, and and I did all right. I'm okay, and that's a form of rationalization. A form of denial, that straight denial would simply be you don't acknowledge it. It doesn't register with you. He did it, but it's not there. My dad was a good man. He was gentle. And if he beat me with a pipe, then I can't allow that to exist with my dad was a good man, he was gentle. And so I block out that he beat me with a pipe. So this is the kind of thing and this happens throughout our families all over the place, this denial. I've seen families where the family has 5 generations that they can trace of sex abuse, yet nobody talks about sex abuse in the family. People don't address it. They don't face it. We see this all the time, like kids who have been sexually abused, and the child is blamed for the sex abuse. The child is, she's oversexed. Believe me, if you've ever heard that statement, you can count on it that has to do with that child being sexually abused. And people can't make the adults responsible, so it gets pushed off on the child, that she's the one with the problem, or he's the one with the problem, not the adult. So denial is, if we have denial, it really gets in our way. We have denial about, like those of us who develop addictions. That's one of our favorites. Denial, denial's not a river in Egypt. And people who have been in recovery programs are aware of that issue, that the way you can keep doing what's not good for you is to go into denial about it. You just don't think about it. You don't let yourself think about it. The same thing happens, to take this out globally, the same thing happens in relation to the world at large. In a dysfunctional society like ours, we are able to rationalize or stay in denial about pollution, for instance. Most of us, not all of us, I'm sure, but most of us came here burning gasoline in our cars and polluting the air. Now we rationalize, we say, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, we could have taken buses. 40 people on a bus, that's a lot less pollution. We could have walked, we could have bicycled, depending on what kind of shape we're in and where we come from. And I say this we, I drove here in a car, so this isn't about, you, this is about us. We go into denial about reality. We hear all of this information about what's happening to our atmosphere, but how much do we pay attention to it? Now, denial is a useful tool. It's what we call a defense mechanism, too, which means it can be useful to us if we don't overuse it. So how would all of us live if we constantly were focused on we're ruining the air? We're destroying the planet. And yet I got to get to work this morning. What am I supposed to do? I could take the bus, but I had to stay up late last night. My kid was sick. I don't have time to take the bus. And so on and so forth. There's all kinds of legitimate reasons why it makes it really hard for us to take dramatic action about this issue that we see as a problem. Now, and so we have to go into denial. We have to live with the denial. Same thing is true, for instance, half of the group here is women. You live in a sexist society that has dominated and controlled you. You live in a society where approximately somewhere between every 3 to 6 minutes another woman will be raped in this society. Every 18 to 21 seconds another woman will be battered. 45% in surveys, 45% of women report being sexually harassed on the job. 1/3 of teenage girls report being sexually and physically abused during dating relationships. Now, that's reality. Now, if you keep that in your brain all the time, it's pretty hard to walk around feeling okay. So we have to use denial to survive so that we can stay focused on whatever we're doing in the moment. Now, if you use the denial to not face it at all, then that's when you get into trouble. And that's what happens to so many of us in our society, is the denial gets us in trouble, we block out the pain, we don't deal with the stuff that's causing us problems, and we just keep going on.